Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up.
It's about seeking truth. It's about speaking truth. It's about keeping it real. That's what we do at Truth Seeker Nation. We keep it 100. Real talk all the time. Let's get it.
What's going on, everyone? Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Truth Seeker Nation podcast. My name is Tawana, and I am your host. A few weeks ago, I spoke about people's tendency to bring up anarchy when conversations about self government are brought up. It's interesting that when they do this, they're looking outward. They're not really thinking about what they do if allowed to self govern, but they're talking about the fear of what others would become. The problem is that this belief doesn't seem to have a basis because if each of us were to look around at the majority of people we know, the evidence points to the fact that most people would not become criminals overnight if the government disappeared. So the question that comes up is, where do these thoughts, or does this fear, this distrust of people come from? In the episode a couple weeks ago called Reaching Our Potential, I was talking about the development of autonomy in children. And I spoke about how teaching children to become autonomous helps them to develop self reliance and a sense of trust for themselves in their own abilities. The trust that is developed is also extended, I should say developed, is also extended to others. It's like the child realizes that they have the capacity to make their own decisions. So, most likely, others also have this capacity as well. However, as adults in this system, being governed by other people, we are unable to develop this same type of self reliance that is developed in children because we're not allowed to develop this reliance in our own capability to operate without government. Just like the controlling parent who dictates or decides things for their child, not allowing the child to be free or in a position to make their own decisions. This government is in the role of regulating and dictating everything for us. Okay. And it's not that we're children, we're adults, but autonomy still develops this self reliance, and we are not autonomous. As a result, we're not in this position. We've never been in this position to develop trust about our own ability to self govern. And I believe this could contribute to why we have a distrust, or people, I should say, not we, have a distrust in other people's ability to do the same. Because how can you trust that others will or can do what you don't even trust yourself to do? And I come to this conclusion because the only people who feel we need to be governed seems to be those who believe they need to be governed. Because those of us who has come to this idea, or to this I'm not even going to call it a belief, this knowing that we are capable and able and should be in a position of self-government, those of us who know this, we also know that other people are capable. We're capable, and therefore other people are capable. Of course, there are some people that are incapable, but those People are proving that now, even with laws in place that they can't govern themselves. Being that we know we can, we feel others can. So I'm just kind of deducing that this is probably what it is. Those who believe that we need to be governed, they must feel that they need to be governed. Or it's because they haven't developed a trust in themselves. They don't know what they would do without government. So, of course, they don't know what other people would do, which this shows first and foremost that it starts with how you feel about yourself. So, that's why it's important to start thinking about some of these ideas and reframing them, starting to analyze these beliefs. Okay, so besides anarchy, another thing I hear people say as a reason why we should not govern ourselves is nobody is above the law. Now, I've heard that one a lot, and it makes me laugh. It really does, because we are all above the law. Now, we got to get one thing straight. Whose law are we even talking about? We have to be on the same page with that. We have already determined that the law of the land, or God's law, or I like to say the laws that govern humanity, those that tell us not to hurt and harm one another, we don't infringe on others' free will, those laws are written into humanity. Those are not man made laws. Those are written in. Nobody is above those. Okay. But we all know that there are thousands and thousands of other laws besides those, which are considered man made laws. The man made laws, which are made by men and women, are the ones that people go to the table and put these in writing. They sit down with Congress. They have hearings. They vote on them. They use their legalese terms to create them. All of these really detailed laws that many of us don't even understand. Those are the laws that I'm talking about. We are all above those because people created them. How can we not? How can people not be above the laws that we created? We created them for ourselves. We are therefore above them. Like, that makes no sense to me that people don't see that. It's really mind-boggling to me to think that people don't get that. But yeah, absolutely. We're all above those laws because we okay, even if some people want to say that these certain laws that were already in place, like let's just say that were written just in the government before we even came on the scene, they were already in place, laws that were already there. I don't know if this is what people think, that because they already were there and then we were born, now we're bound by them because they were just laws that were already in place. But they have to remember something very vital, which is that other people wrote them. We are all human beings and we are all adults. There is no children. We're not talking about children. One adult cannot tell another adult what to do in any setting unless it's agreed upon, unless it's certain specific settings. So to say that because some adults wrote some things down on a piece of paper and called them laws, that other adults now have to submit to that, that's crazy that people think that. But if you think about it like, working at a job, for example, the only time you submit to the leadership at that job is when you work there. But once you quit, they no longer have authority, right? They can't come tell you, the management of that job cannot come tell you what to do. Nor can the management of a job you've never worked at. Like you work at one company, some other CEO, it don't matter how high someone is in another company that you don't work at. It could be the CEO, the director, whoever. Just because they're in that role doesn't mean that they can now come tell you at a totally different job what to do, because their role only is confined to the company that they work in. That's where they have the authority. And I know this is so obvious. I know this, but it seems to be confused when we think about it in terms of the government. People just can't see something that is so clear, that this all has to do with different roles and certain settings that these things apply. They do not apply across the board. Like the way your parents had authority over you when you were children, right? Their authority did not end when you left the house. They were the authority figure or figures. So wherever you went, they were the authority because they actually were an authority figure over you. So wherever you were with them, they could tell you what to do. But with these people in these roles, in the government, in this role of governing us, they can only tell us what to do in certain settings. If we are in their office, if we're in their courtroom, then in that role, they have some type of authority, quote unquote. But if they were just in a store, in the mall somewhere, at a gas station, they couldn't tell you what to do. Just imagine you're at a store or something and a police officer just tells you to sit down and shut up. What would you do? Would you do it? You weren't committing no crimes, you weren't doing anything, you were just doing your shopping and they tell you sit down and shut up. You would probably look at them crazy. Let's just change a little part of that. I said a police officer, but let's just say it was a man in his regular outfit, like a Nike jumpsuit or something. But he was a police officer in his regular role, in his regular job, but he wasn't at work. Right then, he was just a man shopping in his regular clothes. If that man told you to sit down and shut up, what would happen? Would it be some fighting going on? Would it be some cussing going on? I'm pretty sure. The fuck you talking to, right? That would not work. But see, he's a police officer, so he has the authority, right? No, because in that setting, he is not on duty. He doesn't even have a uniform on. You're not doing anything. You're not breaking any laws, like you're just shopping. He can't tell you what to do. That is so obvious. So it's almost like we're in a play. Like these people are playing their roles, which means that in the setting where they have this authority, we would then be playing our role. So the police officer is the authoritative role. In a certain situation, I would play the role of the submissive, which is the one who submits to the police officer. But just like in the example I just gave you of a police officer in his everyday clothes, how is it possible that that same man don't have authority over you because he's a police officer, right? But obviously we know that it doesn't work like that, which shows us that they really don't have authority if it only occurs in certain settings, right? They don't actually have it. It requires us to be playing the role along with them in order for it to work. But obviously, this whole thing has gotten twisted. We have been misinformed. We were born here and just told we have to submit to this, right? So it's time to start getting rid of those false ideas, those false ideologies. Let me share a little story with you guys about something that happened to me about a year ago. I was in a grocery store and I was in the self checkout, just had scanned my shopper's card and put it back in my purse and started scanning my items. And I heard what sounded like somebody say, "Hey, let me get your shopper's card." And I was like, who was that? Who they talking to? I know they ain't talking to me like that. Right. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a police officer. He was also in the self checkout, and there was no one in between, like the section next to me, in between him and I, it was empty. So when I looked over there out the corner of my eye, I could see that he was looking at me. So I knew that he was talking to me, and I figured that's what he said. So I said, "Excuse me?" And he said, "Your shopper's card." And I said, "What about it?" He was like, "Oh, can I use it, please?" He changed his whole entire tone. And at that point, so did I. And I said, "Oh, sure." And I go reach in my purse to try to get it. But in the midst of doing that, he didn't even allow me to get it. He just said, "Oh, never mind. You act like you didn't want to give it to me anyway." And I said, "Well, first of all, I didn't even know if you were talking to me and I didn't know what you said, but whatever, if you don't want to use it, that's fine." And I finished checking out and went to my car. But as soon as I got in my car, you guys, I had to laugh about that situation. I was just wow. It was so funny to me that this man, the first thought that came to him was to demand that I give him my shopper's card. Some people would have saw that uniform though and be like, "Oh, that's a police officer. Oh, sure, officer, here you go." But I'm not that one. Hmm. And when he saw that, he was like, "Oh shit, I'm not on duty. Let me be normal and ask this woman politely. Like go back to my home training when I learned how to say please and thank you." Okay? Because you don't talk to people like that. What the fuck is wrong with you? And bumped your head, right? But it's like I said, it's clear that that is how he talks to people in his role. My point, though, is to say he didn't have authority over me in this situation. He had his uniform on, yes, but he wasn't on duty. So therefore, I didn't have to give him shit. And I could be rude too. I mean, I really wasn't that rude, but I could have been. Could have been like, who the fuck you talking to? Right? But I didn't want to push it. But that's the point. If he would have been in some other clothes, maybe he would have remembered who he was in that moment. He would have been in reality, but he forgot for a split second. Okay. But this just shows you that they do not have authority as a matter of fact, because their authority would follow them wherever they go if it had anything to do with them. It doesn't. It's clear. But I also thought it was funny how he changed his mind. When I went to reach for it, he changed his mind like, "Oh, you act like you didn't want to give it to me anyway." I'm like, "Why would I want to give it to you talking to me crazy like that?" First of all, but secondly, if you really wanted it, you still would have taken it. But I was thinking, was he too proud at that point because he had to stoop down on a lower level and say please to me? Like that's what I was thinking. Like, why did he change his mind? That was crazy. But this is an example to just show you how this authority is really not an authority. It's just an illusion. It's really our minds. It's what we think, who we think that these people are, what authority we think they have. Okay. Yes, they might believe they have some authority and they might try to assert that. But as long as we don't bow down and don't believe it, and we just looking at them like they have on a Halloween costume, just playing dress up or in a Broadway play somewhere, If we looking at them like that, then it don't matter what they're thinking, what they believe they have. They can believe what they want. And that reminds me of sort of like a bully in school. I hope you didn't have to deal with one of those. I never did, but I know of people who have been bullied. Bullies will demand and tell the individual they're bullying, the child they're bullying, what they want them to do. You better do this. You better do that. You better give me your money. You better, whatever, right? But ultimately, at the end of the day, the one who's being bullied does not have to submit. They don't have to do what the bully says, right? The bully may think that they have the right to tell them, but ultimately that child could stand up to the bully and say no. They might do what they want because they're afraid or they don't want to fight, but they really don't have to. The perspective the bully has is just their perspective of wanting them to do it, but that doesn't mean that they have to do it. Bully does not have a right to tell them what to do and actually enforce that. Okay, they might try to force them, but ultimately it's up to the other child that's being bullied if they're going to do it or not, right? The difference between the bully and what we have going on is a lot of times children will end up standing up to the bully, trying to say something back or fight. I'm not saying we have to fight. Okay. We don't have to fight in like in reality necessarily, like physically, but we're not even standing up. And that's the problem. We have to realize that even if they have this perspective, they want to take that perspective, it doesn't mean that we have to feel that way. We have to know what it actually is in reality. So that's why it's important to start looking at these beliefs and keeping them in perspective, understanding what it really is. That is one of the first steps that we are going to need to take in order to get ourselves in the position that we need to be in if we're going to free ourselves from being governed by other people. We have to see reality for what it is. They are other human beings. They got here just like we did, being born through their mother. They are nothing special. I mean, obviously everybody's special, right? But they are not another from another world, more powerful than us or anything like that. They are just other human beings, other adults. And you have to remember, keep in your mind that they can't tell you what to do in any other setting. If they really had authority, they could tell you what to do at any time. And the only way they can tell you what to do in their role is if you think they have authority, then that would make you submit to that. So it's important to see things as they are if we are going to be in the position that we need to be able to stand up against this. And that is all I wanted to say on this topic today, you guys. I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope that you got something from it. And I look forward to speaking with you again next week. Take care.
It's about seeking truth. It's about speaking truth. It's about keeping it real. That's what we do at Truth Seeker Nation. We keep it 100. Real talk all the time. Let's get it.